All right, you're welcome along to our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League final preview show in association with Pepsi Max. Pepsi Max are proud sponsors of the Champions League. Maximum taste, no sugar. You can use the hashtag for the love of it. We have a cracking show coming up over the next 90 minutes or so. Republic of Ireland international Denise O'Sullivan is going to join us in just a little while to look ahead to Saturday's big game between Chelsea and Manchester City. But let me introduce our first two guests. First up is a man who has worn both shades of blue that are going to be involved on Saturday night. He was a Premier League winner with Chelsea and he spent most of his career at Manchester City. Shaun Wright-Philips is with us. Evening, Shaun.
Evening.
And also with us is a man still dining out on that night in Barcelona 22 years on. Teddy Sheringham, good evening.
Good evening to you. Nicely put.
We do want questions from the audience as well who are watching with us live this evening. For Teddy, for Shaun and for Denise, we'll put them in a while. The best one will win a signed Jadon Sancho jersey. You can click on the chat section now, send us your question, and you could be in with a chance of winning that jersey. It's all with thanks to Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar. Teddy, it is that anniversary season for great Champions League finals. I was thinking it's a real shame that footballers aren't like musicians where you get royalties every time it's played. You'd be like Shane McGowan at Christmas and Fairy Tale New York. A big check would come in every May because it just seems to be on the TV non-stop, that goal.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, I get asked every now and again how many times I've spoken about that moment. And I reckon it's probably around 7,500 days since that moment. And I reckon on average, I've had that conversation about in Barcelona that night, probably 7,500 times on average. You know.
Well, so make it 7,501, Teddy.
Here we are. Here we are again.
That goal, it culminated just the most incredible 10-day period for your career where you win the Premier League, you start on the final day of the season against your former club Spurs, you win the title for the first time, then a week later you come off the bench early on, you're man of the match in the FA Cup final, and then you score one, set up one in injury time. Does the buzz of that, does it last all summer? Does it last for the rest of your life?
Well, when people keep coming up to you and telling you about where they were especially in the Champions League final, I hear stories about the 10 days. Yeah, they're fantastic, but culminating in that unbelievable night, people come up and want to tell me where they were. They might have been in South Africa in a bar full of Germans, and they want to tell me what the scenario was. I have stories about it because it was just one of those nights that you remember where you were on that particular night because it was so special, and the way we won it in the last 2 minutes. Didn't play great on the night, but ended up scoring two very late goals and nicking it off of Bayern Munich.
Do you get many who walked out 2-3 minutes before the end of the game in disgust?
No, I haven't had one of those yet, but I do remember that George Best did that, didn't he? I think he
Yeah.
walked out with a couple of minutes to go and thought, that's it, it's all over. But I'm sure there was a few of them, but I've not heard of them yet.
Shaun, unfortunately, your Champions League final memories aren't quite like Teddy's. You were part of a Chelsea squad that got there in 2008, but didn't make the matchday squad, unfortunately.
I wasn't as lucky as Teddy to obviously score and play in them, but just being there, being part of the team and the journey was also just amazing because there's a whole lot that goes into the build-up, the excitement and the week leading up to it. And just on that day, it just wasn't to be for me to get into the squad and also for us to win it. So things don't always turn out the way you hope they do.
When did you find out you weren't going to be a part of the squad?
On the Friday. But no, the Thursday just before we left, and he said, but everybody travels. And I said, that's fine with me. And obviously, I'm not happy, but I'm going to support my team. I ain't going to spoil the occasion for anybody. And I'm just as much as part as they am, whether I get stripped or not. But it's obviously something that was always going to hurt deep down and would obviously hurt on the day. But you can either be with your team or against them. And I chose to be with them. Yeah.
Publicly, then, you're obviously a proper professional and there supporting your teammates. When you go home after a decision like that, are there tears? Are there awkward phone calls for family who are making the trip and who are very excited on your behalf to maybe be a part of this?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's tears. I'm not really a teary guy, to be honest with you. I just know it burnt deep down, and I just had to try and do better the year after, wherever it may have been I was. So that's all I focused on. And in case the next time come, I have to be prepared to be playing at that level where I get picked in the squad or picked to even start.
Teddy, it could have been a similar scenario for you because you weren't picked to start in that game, despite being man of the match in a cup final 4 days earlier. When you find that out, you must be pretty peeved.
Well, my whole 10 days at the end of that season was it was like a roller coaster because I hadn't had the best of the seasons. First of all, Dwight York came in and took my place. I had lots of injuries. I hadn't really played. But I remember Sir Alex Ferguson coming to me in probably early February, something like that, and I'd had another injury. And he just said to me, look, just don't try and be fit for the next week. You know, I've got a funny feeling we're going to have a big end to the season and I want you to be part of it. So make sure you're fit for the long run. And little did I know that I would be back in his plans. I've started the last game of the season against Tottenham. We went 1-0 down, got back into the game. Beck scored a great goal to make it 1-1, but he changed the team at half-time. I came off. Andy Cole went on and scored the goal and we won the league, and it was fantastic. But then I thought to myself, well, if I've started the last game of the season, I might be in his plans. I might start the FA Cup. I didn't start the game. Roy Keane came off after 6 minutes, and Sir Alex turned around to me and said, "You're going on." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm not a midfield player." And I thought, "What am I doing? Why am I even questioning what the manager's saying?" I was on, and after a minute and a half, I'd scored the first goal in the FA Cup final. So I was off and running, and that took me to the Champions League final. And thinking, blimey, I've just been man of the match. I've scored one and made one in the FA Cup final. I've got a chance of playing in the Champions League final. And then when the manager told me that I wouldn't be starting, the disappointment went again. So the down and the roller coaster was again. But then coming off the bench and being a part of a massive celebration, and you know the way we won it in the end in the last couple of minutes was, you know, it'll live with us forever. And the scenes when we got back to Deansgate in Manchester were just second to none. It's just things that you dream of when you're a kid, that how you want them to turn out. That's how it turned out for me in those 10 days. And
did Ferguson turn around and say, "I told you you'd play a big part for me"?
he didn't. No, he just knows that. He just knew, didn't he? He was the man. You know, he had great foresight. He had a great way of making you feel good about something that wasn't a great case. You know, I'd lost my place. I was out of the side, but he still had a way of making me feel part of it, and that I was needed, and he wanted me, and that was how fantastic the man was.
Yeah, it's the one thing that comes up with all the former United players, the ability to say the right thing at the right time. And he was doing an interview with Gary Neville recently where he was talking about the comeback against Spurs, when you'd gone back to Spurs and 3-0 up at half-time and United come back to win 5-3, and he was given the team speech and he walked out of the dressing room, he said, and the first person he saw was you leading the Tottenham team out, and you turned around to the Spurs players at half-time and said, "Whatever we do, don't concede early." That there was something in his eyes that you saw that something was going to happen here, and I think they scored within 60 seconds of the restart and go on and win 5-3.
Yeah. Well, I remember our manager coming in at half-time, Glenn Hoddle at the time, and saying, "Whoa, that wasn't in the script, was it?" You know, he was all chirping. I'm thinking, you know, just don't speak like that. You know, this game ain't over. I know the way that it's a hurting tiger or lion, whatever you're saying. You know, he's a wounded animal. Just be careful what's going to go on here. And that was our mantra, to go out there and make sure we didn't concede in the first 5 or 10 minutes. And as you say, after a minute, it was 3-1 and the avalanche was coming.
When the avalanche is coming as a player, and you've seen both sides of it, is there anything you can do? Do you just know in that second half this is only going one way, that no matter what I do as a senior player, there's just nothing we can do to turn this round?
Well, it's you know, we've all been there, you know, and everybody's in different ideas, you know, unless you've sorted the plan out. It's like, right, what are we doing? Are we going to attack, or are we going to defend that 3-0? What are we going open? Are we doing what we did in the first half? And then when you concede a goal, you just think, oh, right, what are we doing now? Should we make sure it stays at 3-1, or should we try and make it 4-1? And everyone's at 6s and 7s. And when Manchester United are on a roll, especially that day, it was unbelievable the way they turn things round. And at the same time, I remember speaking to a couple of lads, and I said, what did the manager say? What did Fergie say at half time? And he went, I forget who I asked him, it was probably Bex, and he went, do you know what? We all sat in there. We all sat in the change room at half time thinking, oh my God, what's going on? And nothing was really said. And I don't think there was any big speeches. It was just like that, that turnaround of that first goal, and the momentum changed and they were off and running.
Yeah, that was the magic of the man, because on the outside you would think hairdryer treatment is coming. He unleashes on everybody, but you would have been in losing dressing rooms at halftime for Manchester United, Teddy, as well. There was no one-size-fits-all approach with Ferguson when it came to unleashing. He sort of let the players sort it out themselves sometimes, I presume.
Yeah, but there were. But I think there were specific players. You've heard the stories before that he would tear into certain players because he knew he would get the right response, or there might be a fight back in the change room, and all hell will break loose. And that was the fire that was needed to, rather than pick on a couple of the quieter lads, he would pick on the main players so that they would fight back, so that they would say. They would see that there was a fight going on in this game, and it really meant a lot to everybody. So, let's make sure we go out and do a better second half.
Had you many managers, Shaun, during your career that would absolutely unleash it at half-time where it would all kick off?
Yeah, I've had them all the way through my football career, to be honest, since Sunday League, to be honest with you. But
who was the most ferocious?
I wouldn't say he was the most ferocious, but he had like a quick turn of calm to just rage, instant like anger, and it was Mourinho. There was times we would come in and we was losing, and he would just walk in all normal, and as soon as everyone gets in, he would come back from around the corner and just fly kick like all the drinks off the table, and then just let rip. But as you're walking in behind him, he just seems like he's normal, and you're going to get like a normal talking to. But other than that, I'd say he was the worst one. For losing
and was he like Ferguson, brilliant at picking his moment to do it, that it would always get the response?
Yeah, I actually think so. There was a time, I think we played Spurs in the FA Cup, and he came up to me on Wednesday and was training, and he said to me, you're not going to start the game on Saturday, so just be prepared to come on, because if we're losing, I'll bring you on straight away, and then we'll come back and draw the game. So I just thought, all right, he's just keeping me in a good position so I don't get angry or lose my head a little bit. And then he said after that, and then he went on to say, and then we'll take the game to White Hart Lane and then we'll win the game. So I was like, all right, let me just run with this a little bit sort of thing, because he's either seeing something that is really going to happen or he's just trying to make me happy. And we was losing, I think, 2-0 at Stamford Bridge after 33 minutes. He brought me on, and by the time the game had finished, it was 2-2. And then we go to White Hart Lane and win 2-1. So he had a knack for always keeping people on their toes and pretty much happy. There wasn't really any upset characters around the Chelsea team at that time. Everybody was just swinging the same way, which I felt was amazing, because obviously when I was at City, prior to that, if people weren't playing, some of them would have a bad attitude, and Teddy will tell you it does upset training sometimes, because you have some people kicking people, some people just not running around. But at Chelsea, it never had that at the time.
Right. And Teddy, when you go back to, say, not being picked for the final and occasions during your time at United when you wouldn't be picked for games that you'd want to or feel you should, would Ferguson allow players to express their frustration? Would he allow you to get it out of your system, to lose the rag?
Yeah, I suppose so. He had a funny knack of, during that particular season, he would, I might have played on the Saturday and scored a goal and thought, right, that's it, I'm back in favour now. And on the Saturday morning before the game, he would pull you into his office and say, I'm resting for today. You're like, what do you mean? Me. I've only played 2 games in the last 4 weeks and I've just scored and I'm on a buzz. You know, I'm feeling good about myself. He went, yeah, but I'm resting you. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to be rested. I feel fine. I want to be playing. And he's like, you know, you're not resting me, you're dropping me, aren't you? And he was like, yeah. Okay, if that's how you want to put it, you're dropping me. You're still not playing, but, you know, that's the way it is. And you just walk out of his little room and you just thought, what's gone on there? You know, I was feeling great about myself and now you've just put me back on the bench again. So, but he had a way of doing it that was quite a friendly manner to keep you on board.
Yeah, yet somehow a week later when you'd be picked to start, you'd be high in life again and ready to go. The build-up to the final from an Irish point of
confidence.
Yeah, the build-up from an Irish point of view, obviously, at the time was dominated by Roy Keane's absence. And was looking back at the footage of after the semi-final in Turin, and, you know, Roy talks about it and how, you know, he obviously was devastated but wanted to be as professional as possible and maybe not show that disappointment. Geez, when they go into the dressing room and the cameras are there, you can actually really see it, where all the other players, with the exception of Scholes and Keane, are jumping around, celebrating. Bobby Charlton's in there, all the ownership is in there. There's understandable joy at getting to a European final. And it seemed at that moment, after this titanic performance that he put in, that actually it suddenly sunk in that he was going to miss the final. Did you get that sense quite quickly that actually while we're celebrating for these two, they're missing out on something massive?
Yeah, I don't think you actually, you know, unless you clock someone, you don't think about those sort of things at the time. I'm sure in your own body, you've got that realisation that, you know, what a fantastic performance. We've just got through the Champions League final and, oh, shit, I'm not going to be playing. And, you know, you could, you know, that's something for them, those particular players that we're going to be feeling like. I've never had that sort of feeling that I was going to miss out on a game like that or know it right that minute. I've never been suspended for a final like that, so I wouldn't know. But I can't ever remember looking at either one of those two and thinking, oh, they're going to miss out. I think that realises a little bit later on for other people.
Would you have spoken about it around the group and around the dressing room between semi-final and final about the players missing?
I think it was common knowledge by then. You know, the press were making a big thing of it that our two top centre midfielders were going to be out of the fixture, and you know we've got to find a way around it. And any football team who misses their two most influential players, you know, you're gonna feel it. So we knew that they were big holes to fill. But we had some outstanding players at the time and we had to juggle things around a bit. And so Alex picked the team accordingly for the last league game, the FA Cup game, and to keep other players fresh so that they could play to the top of their capabilities on the Champions League final on the Wednesday.
Yeah. Keane has said since that himself and Scholes had a very good time actually in the few days leading up to the final after the FA Cup, that there was a few nights out that maybe the rest of you couldn't enjoy at least. So they had that.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
You played with Roy obviously at Forest a long time before that, and it was on television recently that the Forest-Liverpool game was the first game that was showed in Sky Sports that you scored in, and she's watching it, it was full-blooded. I know you often think of those games maybe more associated with the 70s, 80s. You could get away with a lot in terms of tackling forwards. You have to be able to look after yourselves. When you look at the Keane you first met at Forest to the Keane that you left at United, how different was he?
Oh, completely different player. I mean, I knew him. I'm not sure how old he was. Might have been 19 at Forest. I think it was his first. Might have been his second full season.
Yeah, second season.
Second season. His engine was ridiculous. I mean, the way I played, I came off a centre half, controlled balls. I needed midfield players that were going to run past me to give a question mark to the centre half. Are they going to pick me up or are they going to pick the runner up? And Keane was fantastic like that. You know, he had such an engine that every time the ball came up to me, he'd be running past me, flick-ons, he'd be getting onto him every time. You know, as soon as he got back, he'd be tracking back and he'd be tackling. Then the ball would come up to me, he'd be running back past me again. He was unbelievable. He had a massive, massive engine that he just seemed to want to run all day. And people couldn't compete with him, and that's why Manchester United bought him for big money, because they knew he was going to be a top player. But by the time I got to United, he was a slightly different player. I don't know whether the manager had spoke to him or whether certain injuries had slowed him down a little bit, but he was more of a controlling the ball in centre midfield and picking his times to go beyond. He still had a very good engine, but not like it was in the Forest days. But he was a more rounded, more complete player by the time I'd gone to United.
And in that first season at Forest, was he a leader then? Was he the same personality around the dressing room that he was at United?
No. I wouldn't say he was a leader, not at all. He was a leader in his manner, and he's taking the game to the opposition, didn't care who he was playing against. But we had leaders in Stuart Pearce, Des Walker, Nigel Clough. They were more our leaders. These were players that had been in and around the Premier League, the First Division for a long time, and played for England. So they were our leaders. And Keane was just having fun. I think he was still a young man, still enjoying himself, playing football, going out, having a few drinks, and enjoying himself in that manner.
Shaun, one of the maybe surprises of football over the last couple of years has been the bromance between Roy Keane and Euromate Micah Richards. Mike has been one of the breakout stars of football over the last couple of years. I know, as he would say himself, he was a great player, youngest defender to play for England. Obviously went on and won the Premier League with Manchester City. Geez, he's turned out to be a bit of a superstar on TV.
Definitely at making Roy smile, because he's a hard nut to crack, and you don't normally see Roy smile on TV. But that's just Mika in general. When I played with him at Man City, if he walked in the dressing room, he would automatically be laughing, and his laugh is quite contagious. So everybody else just laughs along with him, even if they don't actually know what the joke is. You naturally just laugh. But he's just a breath of fresh air, and he seems to be doing the exact same thing on TV.
That can wind managers up, I would imagine. That, not the laugh, but maybe that attitude. Did it get him in trouble? Did it? Because at times it might think that maybe you're not taking this seriously enough.
No, I think maybe in a way the managers that we had kind of knew, in a way, the English culture. Micah, no matter how much he laughed and enjoyed it, you could always see he put 110% in when he was on the training pitch and on the pitch. And I think as a manager, that's what you want your players to do. And as long as he delivers on them front, then you can tell at least that he's concentrating in training, and he's taking on the messages that he's been told to take on, and he's putting them out on the training on match days, basically. So for me, it was fine.
He had a really tough time with injuries, obviously, throughout his career. But I mentioned there, getting to play for England at such a young age and getting that Premier League medal in 2012 as well. How good of a player was he?
He was fantastic. I remember him as a young kid, and my brother used to talk about him all the time, like a centre midfielder. He's built like an action man. He's never done weights before in his life until like now. And he was centre midfielder, scoring like 12 to 15 goals. And then he got moved back to centre back. And then when he came through, he was like a powerful right back that loved getting forward and just causing problems.
Yeah. Your dad and Roy Keane get on very well. Your dad was on the show with us last year, and he was saying that Roy was giving him punditry advice, saying no more of that banter bollocks, was what Roy was telling him. When you were growing up, were you there for all the big days? Like, you were 7, 8 when Palace get to the cup final, or were you going to all those matches?
I went to one. That was actually my first game I actually ever went to, was at the old Wembley, Crystal Palace, Man United. Yeah. When Dad came off the bench and equalised after he obviously recovered from his broken leg. But then after then, it was a bit hard because I started playing a lot of Sunday League myself. So to try and pull me and my brother away from football was hard enough. So we just got to the games we possibly could. Right.
That's good focus at that age, because the easy thing, I guess, would be to be walking around town as the big dog. Your dad is becoming a legend at Arsenal, a legend at England. You could have lived off that for a while if you wanted.
But it was one of those where we grew up in South London, especially at my age. The Sunday League teams didn't exist until I was like 13. And it was just a school friend's dad that decided to create one, basically, because all we did was play football. So the chance to have a Sunday League team there, it was either, after all that hard work of getting it sorted and built up, I didn't really want to miss a game regardless of what the situation was.
Yeah. When did you realise you were good?
By the time I got to about secondary school, to be honest with you, and that's when my grades went downhill. to be honest, it was pretty much all my eggs in one basket and went for it.
Yeah, I assume there's pros and cons when you're turning up at Sunday League and there's Ian Wright's son, whereby it probably means you're getting attention from scouts who go, well, there's something there, but also people are probably looking at you going, well, I'm going to take him down a peg or two.
I suppose I've been getting kicked around since I was around 10, to be honest, because we always played football in our local area with guys that were always 7 years older than us. So if they couldn't get us, the best thing for them to do was kick us down. So for me to get kicked was just normal, and I just bounced back up and got on with it. And that's what I pretty much tried to do my whole career. And it's run out now, but it lasted long enough.
Yeah. It's obviously a different time period, but your dad's story was similar at a later age because he obviously played Sunday League well into his late teens, early 20s. So was he able to talk to you about that of, listen, this is what it's about at this age. It's just about survival. You're going to get kicked. Don't react. Just take it and just move on.
And it was hard because when he came to watch me, it was the opposite. Like, so before, if he didn't come to watch me, I was like a controlled footballer. I would dribble and pass. And then if Dad came to watch, I just wouldn't pass the ball at all. I would think I can do it all by myself and just keep dribbling. And he had to pull me aside and say, you have to pass the ball. And I remember him telling me, when he said that to me when I was younger, I said, but they don't pass it back. So I'd rather just keep it, was my reply. And when he wasn't there, I was perfectly fine.
Right. You're probably so good as well, I presume you can just dribble around everyone if you want to.
I could when I was like 10. I don't know about that now.
Yeah, maybe not now. Teddy, yourself and Ian Wright obviously played together a number of times and against each other. The most memorable one, was it Italy, 97, the qualification for the World Cup?
Yes, it was. We always felt we always had a good relationship, me and Senior Wrighty. Always felt like we would have been a good combination. It's just that we played against each other. Millwall against Crystal Palace. I was playing with Cascarino and he was playing with Brighty. And there was always conflict between the two teams and the two sets of centre forwards. But, you know, later on in life, joining up with England, I would like to have played a little bit more with Brighty. I think we would have been a good combination.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have got in each other's areas. Nice understanding. Would have accommodated each other nicely. But, the times we did play together, playing against Italy in Rome when we had to draw the game to get through to the World Cup 98, was quite fantastic as well. Neither of us scored that night, but we played a very resilient game and got us through to the World Cup.
Yeah, well, Ian came pretty close in the final moments of that game to scoring. It was a pretty dramatic ending. When he was on with Saul Campbell, obviously they played together in North London derbies. Saul was saying how much of a nightmare Ian was to play against, that there was a lot of mouth and there was a lot of abuse going on to the opposition centre halves, which he was more than happy to admit to. When you're talking about those Palace Millwall days, was there a bit given out to the opposition centre forwards as well then?
Always. The game has changed so much now. You know, I don't know what would happen in the game now if there was conversations like we had years ago. I don't know that they might complain to the referee or to the PR man in the football club or something and say he's not allowed to talk to me like that. You know, I think it was a proper man's game where you had to stand up and be counted. Now it's just not like that anymore. The game is changing by the minute. I don't know if that's for the better, to be honest. You don't get that hard man in midfield that dictates, you know, puts a hard tackle on someone as if to say, are you ready for this game today, or are you going to whimper out? You know, those hard tackles that you used to get either from centre halves or midfield players, you know, they don't happen anymore on a scale that we used to get them. So the game is definitely changing. Let's hope there's not as many injuries as there were years ago. Bad injuries that were keeping footballers from playing football. But yeah, as I say, it's changing it by a bit every day.
You mentioned Cascarino there. Like, you had such longevity in your career. You played with so many different types of strikers, even from an Irish point of view, from a Cascarino through to a Robbie Keane. You look at Shearer, Cole, York, Michael Owen. Who was your best partner? Who did you most look forward to playing up front with?
All those strikers, you didn't mention my two favourites, or did you? Did you mention Shearer?
I mentioned Shearer, but go on. We could be here all night talking about the amount of players you played up front with. So you pick your two then.
I know. People ask me this all the time, and there's not a lot to choose between Shearer and Klinsmann. You know, they were both absolutely phenomenal. You give them half a chance in a game, and that invariably they would take it. They would definitely hit the target and make the keeper work. You know, just unbelievable. Very different players, but just so focused in what they had to do on a football pitch. They were the out and out number 9s. They were there to score goals, hold the ball up, and be that figurehead for the team. And it was great to play with both of them. They both had different attributes, but both unbelievable players.
Shaun, you played with some unbelievable players, plenty of them during your career. Who's the one that stands out maybe for technical ability, who was sort of head and shoulders above everyone else?
Are you talking about with England as well?
With England as well, England club, you name it.
For me, I'd have to say Stevie G. I think Stevie Gerrard was frightening. I think he doesn't get as much applause as he should have when he was playing. The capabilities that he did, he was your complete, for me, box-to-box midfielder. He was a hard man when he needed to be. He put those little nasty tackles in, as I know, because I was been on the receiving end of a few of them. And he also had the quality that he can give you the ball anywhere you want. And from your box-to-box midfielder, he scored some massively important goals. But he was the guy that when I first went to my first England trip, and he was the first person to actually hit the ball into me, that made me think, okay, I need to be on my A game all the time if all the passes are coming in like that. And he just played at the same level every day, regardless if it was training or a match. So for me, Stevie G would be the main one.
And when you're talking about the balls coming into you, is that just the pace of the ball and you need to be able to stop it dead and do that next thing instantly?
Yeah, exactly. So the ball's coming in hard. Sometimes it can be bouncing, or sometimes it can be a daisy cutter, but it's coming in quick enough so it can't be intercepted. And I've got to be on my A game to obviously control it and go the direction I want, so I don't mess up an attack. So you always had to concentrate with him around.
The lack of appreciation for Gerrard, maybe, I presume, comes from not winning the Premier League title with Liverpool during his career. It does seem, though, Shaun, that actually within the game, you hear that a lot when players of your generation talk about the best. He's one that comes up all the time.
Yeah, and like I said, because of what we've seen him do in the games and how he's destroyed midfield sometimes single-handedly, and the important goals he's scored in the Champions League and the FA Cups, like, how can you not put him up there, to be honest with you? I understand that some people say because he hasn't won the Premier League, but you can't take away the trophies that he has won.
Yeah. Were you on the pitch in 06, Teddy, when Gerrard scored in the cup final?
I was standing right next to him. Should have. I'd come on as substitute. We were winning 3-2 with, I don't know, was it 5 minutes to go? Might have even been a little bit later than that. And the ball fell to a very, very tired Stevie Gerrard. He's actually said that he had cramp. You know, he didn't want to run with it, so he just hit it as hard as he could. And it absolutely flew past Shaka Hislop. It was one of the best FA Cup final goals, you know, that are likely to be seen. And sent the game into extra time, and there was a lot of tired players out there.
Yeah, but you're just on as a sub, so you probably should have closed them down.
Yeah, I probably should have done. About a couple of years earlier, I might have been able to close him down, but wasn't really my forte, though, was it?
No, Shaun, it's around that period where you go to Chelsea. Like that summer, you've just got in the PFA Team of the Year for how well you've done at Manchester City. But City obviously aren't the club that they are right now. Chelsea are the champions. They have the hottest young manager in world football at the time in Jose Mourinho. Was it an absolute no-brainer to move to Chelsea at the time?
To be honest, I didn't actually want to go. None of it was actually my choice. From what I found out 6 months to a year later is that the club needed to sell me. Otherwise, there could have been administration problems.
Right.
So it wasn't something that I thought about at the time. Like as a young kid coming through the ranks, I always just assumed that I would play for the one team until I basically retired. But it didn't go that way. And once they accepted, obviously, the transfer and the situations occurred that I had to leave, I was just fully focused on getting down there and getting started.
You mentioned Gerrard there and, needing your A game. When you go into that Chelsea side, like that midfield is one of the greatest Premier League midfields of all time, where you have Makelele, Essien, Lampard. You've Drogba leading the line, and then you've got Robin, Duff, Cole, yourself, all battling for position there. Training at Chelsea at that stage must have been at an insanely high level.
Yeah, it was actually very high, and obviously, like you said, with Essien coming over, and obviously I can't remember roughly the time that Obi came over. It got to the point where it was that physical in training, and the tackles were flying in. That Mourinho was getting to a point where he was going to make us wear shin pads in training, because people were just playing training exactly how they would play a game. So the intensity is always going to be high, and good competition is healthy for every player, especially when it comes to fighting for places.
Yeah.
Ain't they the best training sessions though, righty, when everybody's doing it how it should be? A few tackles flying about as well.
Yeah, that for me, they've always been the best training sessions. I hated sessions where there wasn't enough contact and it just felt like you could run past someone, because I know that's not what's going to happen in a game. So the more they kicked me around, the more I was prepared for the weekend.
Yeah. Essien, you mentioned there, I think he came in the same summer to Chelsea. He's almost one of the forgotten greats of the Premier League at this stage, because, geez, for 2 or 3 years there, he was unstoppable in that Chelsea midfield.
But he had the qualities, but he was so physically strong. Almost, if you think you can get the ball, he would just plant his leg. You try to go around his leg, you can't. And he had, like I said, the quality on top of it to see passes. He worked hard, and he even got in on a few goals as well. And he scored some fantastic goals in a Chelsea shirt.
Yeah, that one against Arsenal, was it, in the last minute, was one of the all-time great Premier League goals, I think. When you look at Mourinho now then, and the Mourinho, say, we've seen in the Tottenham documentary and what we've seen at Manchester United, who's been falling out with players, who's been isolating players, what happened, say, with Pogba and Luke Shaw, and now to Spurs with Danny Rose and Dele Alli. Do you look at that Mourinho and think that's a world away from the guy I dealt with 15 years ago?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a world away. I think the team he had at Chelsea is completely different to the teams he's had. He could pretty much say any tactics to us when we was at Chelsea, and we would go out and do what the manager says. But because we had the qualities in all positions, they would always work. Normally we would either overpower teams, or we was resilient enough to just win 1-0 and go home and be happy with a 1-0 boring game. But I think his time now, it goes back to, like Teddy said, when he went into Fergie's room to ask why he wasn't playing, and Fergie basically said he can take it as he's dropped if he wants, but it's still the same position. He understood then when he walked out that Fergie's the boss, so let me just go out and do what I'm doing. Whereas I feel like the players now of this age, there's so many egos that even if the boss says something and the players ain't happy, then the egos clash. Whereas if Mourinho said something to us when we was at Chelsea, we'd just say, okay, this is what the manager wants. I'm not playing this time, but I'm going to train hard enough so he doesn't have a choice to leave me out the weekend after, where I think now the players are a bit different.
So at Chelsea at that time, there was obviously a lot of rotation. So there wasn't, even when we're going back to what we were talking with Teddy and Alex Ferguson, when he was changing things at Manchester United, players would just accept it. They'd put the head down and look at themselves rather than trying to blame the manager.
I think especially at a team like Chelsea at that time, there was 2 to sometimes 3 players for every position. And there was periods where if there was international duties, there was only like 2 players left at the training ground. So he would just give them like 10 days off. So it was a team stacked with quality, and everybody accepted that there was going to be rotation, and you do have to fight for your position to play a little bit more than others. But I just think now there's a lot more player power than there was then when he first started at Chelsea.
Yeah. At that stage, life is going really well for you. You know, you're in and around the England squad and you get almost 40 caps for England throughout your career. A lot has come out about that period over the last few years, about that golden generation and maybe why it never really happened. Like Rio Ferdinand was really honest last year when saying that actually when he was in camp, he's looking at Frank Lampard and thinking, I don't want to give this guy an age that he's going to bring back to Chelsea. And that led to this divide of Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool. Is that something, because you would have seen probably when you were with Chelsea and with Manchester City, is that something you were quite aware of at the time?
No, because I suppose at that time, when I went away with England, I didn't really concentrate or think about things like that. I just focused on what I was going to be doing there when I was on the training pitch. And at times, it was only normal for me to hang around with, say, Jermaine Defoe, and when Wazza come in, sometimes Wazza, because we were all around the same age group, so we were into similar things. But the things that Rio may have seen, obviously he was in the camp longer than me. He would have witnessed a lot more of than me. I just didn't pay no mind to it. I just was delighted to be in the country, representing the country and being involved in a squad.
Of course, Teddy, your time at England was the opposite. You got on too well.
What are you alluding to?
Well, we talk about good anniversaries, and this time of the year, the Champions League final always coming up. It's 20 years, obviously, since, or 25 years since Euro 96 at this stage. So there's going to be a lot of nostalgia, particularly with the Euros being back in the final, being at Wembley. I've been watching a lot about this, and there's just so much joy in that summer, and football's coming home, and the theme song, and the sun is shining for all of it. Like when we talk about the wake of 99 and the success, that summer from the outside looks like it must have been one of the most enjoyable periods of your career.
Without a doubt, it was very, very, very special. The competition just kept generating more excitement for England fans. The tournament got bigger and bigger for everybody. It was just bubbling so nicely. Obviously, not such a good result against the Swiss, but then when we beat the Scots, and then beating the Dutch, and the way we did sent us into the finals against the Spain and going through and penalties. Eventually, you know, winning a game on penalties. And then taking us to the Germans, you know, the whole country was just bubbling with excitement and optimism. That it was just amazing times to be involved with England. Playing on home soil was a massive advantage, which the boys should realise that. I think we had a lot of very, very experienced players at the time. We had a lot of captain material players all over the pitch, and we just felt like it was our time. Ifs and buts, you know, all about penalties again and getting knocked out, and things didn't go quite according to plan, but it was certainly something fantastic to be involved in. And I'd just say to the lads, just give it everything you've got, because you can be heroes this summer. I think I like Gareth. I like what he's doing. I like what he's getting his players at, the mentality he's getting. He learned an awful lot from Terry Venables. So I like how he's trying to build his team and his team spirit, like a club unity. And there's some outstanding players that are ready for this moment, I think. So give it your best shot and, you know, become legends for the rest of your lives.
They obviously won't have the pre-tournament trip away. Can I ask you in all seriousness around the fallout of the dentist chair? Because that period where English football is, like the tabloids are all over English players. When you're in the eye of that sort of a storm, and it's not just you who's looking forward to this tournament, it is your family, your friends, and suddenly you're on the front page of the tabloids. And, you know, as players, you have an understanding of what went on that night, but it just blows into this massive storm where everybody is focusing in on what English football is about. What are those 2-3 days like, where I guess there's a lot of uncertainty as to what is going to happen, the group, and how long the tabloid attention is going to stay on you?
Well, you have to be very true to yourself when you're a footballer. You have to sacrifice at the right times, and you have to enjoy it at the right times. You don't always get the amount of time that you want as a footballer. That particular time, we was allowed to go out for a night out 2 weeks before the start of a major competition. We felt there might be other people that think that would be derogatory to our bodies to go out and get drunk 2 weeks before. But when you're looking at it from a young man's point of view, that a few beers and, you know, a little bit of fun, it's not going to be so bad. So we were allowed out. We had a night out. The pictures look worse than what it was, obviously.
Well, in fairness, Teddy, your body looked in great shape on the front of the Sun. Your body looked in great shape with the beer all over it and the top pretty much ripped off.
I like that picture. It's not the worst picture I've ever had taken of me.
Those days when you come back, though, and like the heat is really on, as a group, do you come together? Is there a calmness of, okay, if we just keep the heads down, we'll get through this? Or, like, you know, I'm sure every public figure is commenting about it. Everyone's being critical. Like, is there a worry that, you know, some action is actually going to be taken out of this?
Yeah, well, I think the way the manager, Terry Venables, defended us at the time, you know, obviously he wasn't happy. And we, you know, it wasn't great to be having those photographs on the front page of the Sun and the Mirror. You know, it looked disgraceful. And the manager was upset. He told us in no uncertain terms. But what he did, he defended us to the press and said, look, I gave them a night out. They've had a night out. It looks like it's got a bit too leery, but that's my fault. And he protected us to the hilt. And he used that in a way to get us as a unit, get us as a club team. And, you know, it's them against us. Don't worry about what anybody else is saying. We've got to do it for us. We've got to do it for the country. And let's go out and make sure we put on a show. And that's what we tried to do.
Yeah, geez, you were incredibly fortunate that you had a manager who was as calm and as rational as Venable was in that situation. Maybe it was that he knew he was leaving at the end of the tournament and he was able to keep the FA at bay. But, you know, I'm sure you've worked under lots of managers who would have reacted very differently.
Yes, without a doubt. And that's what made the manager. That's why, you know, people ask me who's my favourite managers in my time as a footballer. And Ferguson obviously becomes one of those. But Venables was fantastic as well. He had a great way of making you feel good about yourself. He would defend you to the hilt if he loved you and if you was giving him everything. But he had a great way of making you produce your best football, and that's what a manager's job is to do, is to make sure you get the best out of your players. And he certainly did that. He gave me oodles of confidence and just made me go out on the pitch and believe that I could do whatever I wanted.
It does make it all the more peculiar that 2 years later, when I won't say something similar happens because it's not as big a deal even 2 years later, that Hoddle reacted in such a different way to Venables.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. And I've said about that moment that I don't think it was great management in him making me read out a public apology. I spoke to him in his office about his playing days and had heard all about him, and you know he didn't want to hear any of it, and I was pretty upset because the picture that was taken that time was nowhere near anything what we'd done in Hong Kong in the dentist chair, and it was a picture that was not faked up. It was a proper picture, but it wasn't anything to do with it. And I tried to explain the situation, and he didn't have any of it. So I was very disappointed. He was probably disappointed in me, but you know, my reasoning was explanatory, you know, for that picture. But he didn't want to hear any of it, and that's where the difference in management. Maybe it was just being a younger man, and Venables was a more experienced man to understand what he'd been through. Maybe in times, you know, it was just very different, and that's the two differences that make a manager that you want to run through a brick wall for.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look back at the Hoddle era, obviously the way it ended is what dominates, but also there's Beckham's moment of madness and there's the brilliance of Michael Owen, and that's all you think about. And you sort of forget about what happened there, and you know, talking to Neville and Beckham about the way they were put in a similar situation where publicly they're left out of the side and have to go and sit in a press conference. Do you ever wonder, do you ever talk about, like, if Terry Venables had somehow stayed on for 2 years, how different 98 could have been?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, things were, you know, we were so close to getting to the final of that tournament. You know, who knows what would have happened in the final? You don't know. But we felt like we was on to something good. He was a fantastic manager. I felt the same when he was Tottenham manager. I felt that we were very close to becoming a top club. The same as when we played with England. We were on the right path to becoming very, very competitive at the highest level, and that all changed. But you know, it's all ifs and buts now, isn't it?
Yeah. We are going to get into our preview of Saturday's game, but Shaun, I just did want to ask you one question about when you went back to Manchester City, because you go back just a couple of days before the takeover happens, and like, it's this crazy day. I remember in Sky Sports News where it's the yellow banner and it says Manchester City are interested in Lionel Messi, Robinho and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That sort of wealth was suddenly coming to the club, and Robinho's the one who arrives in. Yet that first season at City, Stephen Ireland is Manchester City's player of the season, and you know, he was at that period a player in Ireland we were banking on maybe for the next 10, 15 years, leading the national side. What are your memories of Stephen Ireland that season and the sort of talent that he was?
It was, for me, it was great because obviously I'm an attacker. I like to run in behind. I don't always expect to dribble past people. I like to play and move, and the way me and Stevie linked up within the games we played was perfect. He automatically knew without me shouting, he could understand what I wanted to do. And when I went back there playing with him, I didn't feel too far away from, say, the quality that was at Chelsea at the time with your lamps, which can hit you from pretty much anywhere on the pitch. Stevie had all those attributes in his locker, and he could get up and down the pitch as well. He was a very, very fit player, and he was just outstanding to play with.
Why do you think it never got to that next level?
I don't know. I think he had a few injuries, and he started doing, I think it was like jiu-jitsu and other things to try and help him become stronger, where it made him bigger. So when you get naturally bigger, you lose certain attributes I think that you had. But I can't say for sure what it was, but he's always still going to have the quality he had. He just maybe turned into, for me, a different player, but he could have been unbelievable.
Yeah, it is a real shame in so many different ways. You were there right at the start of this Manchester City project. In some ways, maybe it'll come to a culmination as European champions on Saturday night. We are going to talk about that in just a moment. This is our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League final preview show. It's in association with Pepsi Max. They're proud sponsors of the UEFA Champions League. Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar. You can use the hashtag for the love of it. Teddy Sheringham and Shaun Wright-Philips sticking with us. Denise O'Sullivan going to join us in just a moment.